So this right here is a brand new high-end mid-tower case from Corsair, the iCUE 5000T RGB. And this case came out last week with a price tag of $400 without taxes in the US, or about 400 euros here in the Netherlands. Now, like I said in my previous video, when you ask that much for a PC case, it means that the expectations will be very high to begin with, and it can be very difficult to justify that price. Now, you can either get it in black or in white, like I have right here, and it should be available in stores already. So let's check it out and see if it's worth considering at all. Let's begin. This video is brought to you by Gigabyte and their M32U gaming monitor. The M32U features a fast IPS panel with a 4K resolution and 144Hz refresh rate. It has a ton of important gaming features, including FreeSync Premium Pro, as well as G-Sync compatibility, and it just offers everything you need for a high-end gaming experience. Plus, compared to the other 32-inch high refresh rate 4K gaming monitors on the market, the M32U offers the best value of them all. Check it out using the links in the description below. Now, the 5000T is pretty much based on the same chassis as the 5000X and the 5000D that launched last year. It is a mid-tower case that is 56 centimeters tall, 53 centimeters deep, and about 25 centimeters wide, so it is big enough for a typical ATX build or even a compact custom loop without being too extreme. And while it shares the same core as the earlier 5000 series cases, the exterior panels have been completely changed. Now, the feet are different too, and they made it like that mostly to be able to build even more RGB into them. And there are LED strips at the top, at the front, and in the bottom, and then on the both sides. And the strips do have a very nice and a very vibrant glow. And since this is Corsair, you can use their iCUE software to apply all sorts of presets to the RGB, or even set your own complex lighting effects if you have a bit of time on your hands. Now, the panels themselves are nice as well, with a thin layer of metal on top of a plastic frame, so the whole case is not super heavy, but it does have a nice feel to it and a nice smooth finish. The front panel is focused on airflow, and it has a bit of a finer design than they used previously. There's a fine mesh behind it, which is quick to clean, as you can just pull out the front panel very easily. And the same goes for the top panel, that you can also just take off to get access to the top filter. Now, the bottom filter though is a little bit harder to reach because it needs to be pulled out from the back. So you either need to have a lot of space behind your PC, or you need to move it every time you want to clean the filter, which I have to say is not my favorite choice. One of the nicest upgrades is the addition of the hinge doors that are secured with a screw. It just makes working on a case super easy, and it does give it a bit more of a premium look, in my opinion. For the front I/O, you get 4 USB 3.0 ports and a single fast Type-C port, as well as a combined audio jack. Now, 4 Type-A ports do mean that ideally you want to get a motherboard that has a double USB 3.0 header, and those are not that cheap either. But the inside is still very much so a 5000D or a 5000X, and those are $150 to $200 cases. And I mean, it is the same in terms of quality and features. An ATX motherboard will fit the nicest, as that lets you keep the cover in the front part, which makes your whole build look a lot cleaner. You could fit a larger motherboard, but it won't look as nice because you'll have to open up that front cover to be able to fit your cables nicely. Now, removing that cover also opens up space for 3 more fans that are right next to your board, but as you will see later on, there is absolutely no need to add more fans. You can fit a GPU that is up to 40 centimeters long, so basically any modern high-end GPU should fit just fine. And this time around, they cut out a piece of the power supply shroud, so you can kind of show off which power supply you're using in your build. On the top, you can fit either a 280mm or a 360mm radiator, and there is enough space that with a typical radiator size, you will not have any compatibility issues with your motherboard or your memory. If you decide to go for air cooling instead, you have 170mm of clearance, which will easily fit the majority of large air coolers as well. In the back, you can fit a single 120mm fan, and I have to say I'm pretty disappointed that they didn't put one there by default. It doesn't really need it for performance reasons, but I do think it would look much better with a nice RGB fan in the back, since RGB is kind of the whole theme of this case. And then given the very high price tag, it should have been included regardless. You do get 3 Corsair LL RGB fans in the front, but do keep in mind that you get the same fan layout on the 5000X, which costs half as much. Now, it would have been nicer if they included Corsair's QL fans that have a much nicer RGB effect on the back of the fans, or at least made the cables white. I mean, anything would be fine to put this case above what we've already seen before, but then for a lot less money. Now, the back has a pretty typical tower layout as well, so you can easily fit a large power supply. You can fit a couple of SSDs here, and you have enough space for a pretty lazy cable management. So there's nothing extraordinary here, but it is more than enough to make a build like this one, for example. You do get a Commander Core XT unit, which controls the RGB strips around the case, and it can control up to 6 RGB fans. But unfortunately, if you want to use Corsair's own H150i all-in-one cooler, you cannot just connect everything to this Commander Core, because it actually misses the power connection and your pump will not work at all. So you actually have to add a big controller of the cooler just to power the pump, which I think is ridiculous. It would be nicer if they made it in a way so it's completely compatible with their own components. Anyway, it does include 2 separate temperature sensors that you can just place anywhere in your case, and then use those to base your fan curves on, or even your RGB profiles on, which I do think is very nice. So for my build here, I went with the ASUS Z690 Hero motherboard with an i9-12900K, the H150i Elite LCD water cooler from Corsair, and their Dominator Platinum DDR5 RGB memory. For the GPU, I'm using the Gigabyte RTX 3090 Gaming on C, and it's powered by Corsair's RM1000X power supply. But during testing, we kind of ran into a problem with the fan controller. So you need Corsair's iCUE software to control the fans as well as the RGB, and that kind of lets you pick from a couple of different fan profiles. But on any setting, even the default quiet mode, it would just spin up the fans to about 2300 RPM every time the CPU or GPU would do anything at all. So even if I was just installing an application, for example, the fans would spin up so aggressively and then spin down again, and that was incredibly loud and very annoying. Now, we did speak to Corsair about this, and it just seems like the software was reacting too quickly to some of the temperature spikes of this i9 processor, and that they are working on a software update that should fix all this. So I do assume it will be out very soon. Now, you can get around this by setting your own fan curve, but on a case of this caliber, I do have to be a bit more critical and say that they should have caught this early on and sorted it before launching this case, because as soon as you install iCUE, it will start doing it, and it might not be an issue with other processors, but it's also very likely that anyone that is going for a 400 euro case will also go for a high-end i9 as well. So keep this in mind, and let's just see how the software update will sort it out in the future. But the performance of this case is excellent. So while gaming with the fans manually set to fairly quiet 38 decibels at 50 centimeters distance, the CPU was in the high 50s while pulling around 85 watts, and the GPU was in the low 60s while pulling around 336 watts. So realistically, you can expect this case to handle any high-end gaming rig easily without the need to add extra fans. Now, in a pure CPU stress test with the i9 pulling around 250 watts, the temps went up to low 80s without adjusting the fan speed. So that is also a very good result considering how hot the i9 usually gets, which means there is also a bit of room for overclocking if you let the fans spin up a bit more. So overall, it is a very nice case that is very easy to work with, and it performs really well. but it is not a 400 euro case in my opinion. Now, I usually sort cases into 3 big categories, so if you want something decent that performs well, you can find very good cases for about $100 or even less, like Corsair's own 4000D Airflow, for example. And realistically, you should not need more than that. But if you want to get something a little bit more premium and you're totally okay with spending around $200 to $250, you can find some really great cases that offer better build quality, that offer more options, more features, and so on, like the 5000D and 5000X, for example, and those are some excellent cases. And then, if you decide to spend even more than that, and keep in mind 200 is already a lot in my opinion, you're getting into the area of truly special, extraordinary cases that really stand out from the rest of the market in a lot of ways. And to me, this 5000T just doesn't do that. It has the same chassis like those $200 cases, but then with a bit nicer panels and a bit of extra RGB. There's nothing else. And in my opinion, paying that price is just not worth it for what you are getting. I mostly struggle here with the fact that they could have done more to make it better. They could have added QL fans, which are nicer, or at the very least add a 4th fan in the back if they wanted to make that ultimate RGB case. And it just seems like they didn't want to bother to make this feel like a proper $400 experience. But still, it is not a bad case, just a hugely overpriced one. So unless the price goes down by a lot, this will only make sense for those die-hard Corsair fans who really don't care about the price and really like the looks of this one. For everyone else, I would just look at other cases in the 5000 series or even 4000 series that are basically just as good but offer a much better value. Now that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it and if you want to see more content like this one, please do consider subscribing to this channel. Bye y'all and see you in the next one.